This is a painful story. Viewers' discretion is advised. What you're about to see in this video is what happened in a small African country, the Gambia. It was the moment the Gambia almost collapsed. What started as a political uprising became a nightmare no one could stop. Now let me tell you a bit about the Gambia, the background of this story, and how all this chaos began. This entire landmass is called Senegal. Keep that in mind as it will come handy in this story. On the left side of Senegal is the Atlantic Ocean. Between the north and the southern part of Senegal and the Atlantic Ocean lies a small, peaceful nation known as the Gambia, often referred to as the smiling coast of Africa. By the late 1970s, this peaceful nation was governed by a soft-spoken president, Jawara, a man who had led the country since independence in 1965. He was widely respected but not loved by everyone. Beneath the surface of the Gambia's calm exterior, cracks has begun to show. The youths were frustrated, prices were rising, wages were falling. The people felt that the government was listening less and controlling more. In July 1981, with the president out of the country, the unthinkable happened to this peaceful nation, a coup d'etat. It would go down in history as one of the darkest and bloodiest weeks the Gambia has ever seen. A dark moment where children lay their hands on automatic machine guns, randomly shooting and killing people on the street. Looting shops and inflicting severe pain on their fellow brothers and sisters. This is the dark and true story of the 1981 Gambian coup attempt and how the smallest country in mainland Africa came dangerously close to collapsing. In the years after the Gambia became independent, President Jawara's party, the People's Progressive Party, was in full control of the country. For a while, things seemed peaceful. But by the late 1970s, many Gambians were beginning to lose hope. The economy was getting worse. Prices kept going up. Even rice, the main food in most homes, became too expensive for many families. Young people had no jobs. Parents were struggling to feed their children. Life becoming harder every day. Government workers and police officers were also suffering. Their salaries were delayed or too small. Some had to wait months just to get paid. People began to strike. Protests grew louder. The public was angry and tired. Even the field forces, a special group of armed men trained to protect the country, was unhappy. They were not treated well. They lacked good training. They were paid very little. Many of them felt used and forgotten. Slowly, their frustrations turned into anger. The system was not working for them. The streets were full of complaints, empty stomachs, and broken promises. And when a country is in that kind of pain, it becomes very easy for someone radical, someone bold, someone angry to step in and say, "Enough is enough." The stage was set. The Gambia was like a dry grass in the sun, just waiting for a match to spark the fire. In the early years after independence, Kukoi was like many other young Gambians, bright, hopeful, and full of dreams for his country. He grew up in the Upper River region and was known to be a clever and outspoken person in that region. People around him saw him as a rising star in politics, but as time went on, Kukoi became disappointed with how the country was being run. He felt betrayed by the very leader he had once believed in. He left the Gambia and went abroad, but he didn't just disappear. While outside the country, Kukoi began studying political ideas, especially those of Karl Marx, Pan-African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, and other revolutionary thinkers. These ideas opened his eyes to what he believed was the real problem, that the Gambia had become a puppet of Western powers, and that President Jawara was helping them control the country. Kukoi see himself as a freedom fighter, someone who could bring real change to the Gambia. He dreamed of a new system where ordinary people, not corrupt politicians, had power. A system where the rich Western countries wouldn't control poor African nations. He imagined a Gambia that was equal, strong, and free. Kukoi didn't stop at dreaming. While still outside the country, he began building support. Quietly, he reached out to former soldiers, frustrated field force members, and other angry youths. Many of them felt forgotten by the government and believed in Kukoi's idea. He told them, "We can take this country back. We can fight for the people." Secretly, he began training and planning. He formed a small revolutionary group, ready to strike when the time was right. And as the pain of the country grew, hunger, joblessness, corruption, so did his support. Kukoi was watching and waiting. The country was weak, people were angry, and Kukoi believed now is the time. It was a quiet morning in the Gambia on July 30th, 1981. Most Gambians were going about their normal lives, unaware that the country was about to be thrown into chaos. President Jawara was out of the country. He was thousands of miles away in London attending the royal wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. But while Jawara's attention was on the royal wedding, Kukoi Sambasanyang and his men were preparing something very different. In the darkness of early morning, he struck. With a group of heavily armed supporters, many of them former field officers and angry youths, Kukoi launched his coup. Their first target, the Radio Gambia. They stormed the national radio station, took control of it, and silenced all government broadcasts. Then came the Yundum Airport, then the State House in Banjul, the heart of Gambian leadership. It all happened so fast. Within hours, Kukoi made an announcement over the radio. President Jawara is no longer your leader. This government has fallen. A new era has begun. Those words shook the entire country. People across the Gambia turned on their radios and froze in disbelief. Fear spread like wildfire. Shops began to close. Families locked their doors. Children clung onto their mothers, not knowing what would happen next. Kukoi declared himself the leader of a revolutionary council. He said it was time to break free from colonial influence and build a new Gambia for the poor, for the workers, and for the future. But the streets told a different story. His supporters began arresting government ministers, taking over police stations, and seizing weapons. In some areas, looting broke out. Stores were robbed. Innocent people were caught in crossfires. For the first time in the Gambian history, the nation was not in the hands of an elected president, but under the control of a self-declared revolutionalist. A small country known for peace has suddenly become a battleground, and the man behind it all, Kukoi Sambasanyang, was now at the center of the Gambia's most dangerous moment. The coup was only the beginning. What followed was a storm of fear, blood, chaos, a nightmare the Gambia has never seen. For 7 long, painful days, Gambia was in complete chaos. The peaceful streets of Banjul turned into battlegrounds. No one felt safe. Rebel fighters and loyal forces battled in the heart of Banjul. Shops were broken into. Homes were looted, government offices were broken into and torn upside down. Hospitals were overflowing with the wounded. Doctors and nurses worked without rest, but there were not enough supplies. Electricity went out, water became scarce. Telephone lines were cut, cutting families off from each other. Banks were raided and closed. There was no way to get money or send help. Many Gambian families rely on what they earn each day to buy food for the next. With the country in chaos, markets shut down, transportation systems shut down, trucks couldn't deliver goods. Bread, rice, oil, everything disappeared from the shelves. Some families had nothing to eat. Parents stayed hungry just to feed their family or their children a small meal. In panic, some people rushed to buy and store whatever food they could find. Others were not lucky. They waited in long, tense lines, hoping to get even a handful of rice, bread, or whatever food they could lay their hands on, because people didn't know when or how this would end. People began running, leaving behind their homes, their belongings, everything. Many fled into the countryside, trying to find safety in the villages. Others escaped across the borders into Senegal, looking for peace. Whole families hid in forests, in compounds, anywhere bullets couldn't reach. Meanwhile, Kukoi's forces were hunting. Government ministries were cracked down. Some were arrested, some killed, others managed to escape and try to regroup in rural areas to fight back. It was no longer just a coup, it has turned into something much bigger, much darker, a full uprising, and no one was in control. The international world watched quietly, unsure of what to do, but in the nearby Senegal, the fear was real, and actions was coming. Far away in London, as the chaos unfolded back home, President Jawara was devastated. His peaceful country, once calm and quiet, was now on fire. He knew time was running out. Without delay, Jawara reached out to his trusted neighbor, President Abdou Diouf of Senegal. He pleaded for urgent military help to take back control and save the Gambia from complete collapse. Remember earlier we said that Senegal borders the Gambia on all sides except for the Atlantic Ocean. That geography became Jawara's biggest advantage. If anyone could help, it was Senegal, and they could enter the Gambia from any direction. Senegal too had reasons to worry. This coup in the Gambia could spill over into Senegal. Kukoi's words were fiery and dangerous, too similar to radical group movement that had caused problems in other African countries. Therefore, Diouf didn't waste time. He put together a plan. Senegalese army would intervene, not just to help Jawara, but to protect peace in the whole region. They could enter the Gambia with full force, crush the rebellion, and bring back stability. Kukoi and his men weren't going to give up easily. As Senegalese troops began entering the country, Kukoi made a desperate move. He and his comrades broke into military armories and handed out guns to young, untrained men on the street. Many of them were angry, desperate, and just excited to hold a weapon. Some treated the fighting like a video game, shooting wildly at anyone and anything. Fear spread even faster. To make things worse, prisoners were released from jail. Some grabbed guns and joined the violence, killing anyone who got in their way. He kidnapped Jawara's wife and children, using it as a power bargaining chip. The chaos reached a new level. Fighting was no longer organized. It was madness. And into the madness, Senegalese army was now marching. And the battle to save the Gambia has now begun. On August 1st, 1981, Senegalese troops crossed into Gambia. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for and hoping that would bring back peace. They came in large numbers, armed and well-trained, ready to take back control from Kukoi's forces. Their goal was to restore peace, protect civilians, and bring President Jawara back to power.
But they were not alone. Two British from their Special Force unit sent quietly and quickly to join the mission. Their attack was clear and dangerous. Rescue President Jawara's wife and children who were still held hostage by Kukoi's forces. They moved in with precision and courage, managing to save the family and support the fight against Kukoi's forces. Meanwhile, fighting broke out near the key location, especially around Banjul and Yundum area. Kukoi's forces, determined and heavily armed after looting armories, resisted with everything they had. Gunfires echoed through the streets. Bullets flew widely. Some rebels fired without control, turning neighborhood into a war zone. But Senegalese soldiers were better trained and more equipped. Step by step, they pushed back the rebel forces. Civilians, terrified and hiding, could finally see a glimpse of hope as others slowly began to return. After several tense days of combat, by August 5th, the fighting came to an end. Kukoi and his few men had run away, fleeing towards the borders. The attempted coup had completely collapsed, but the cost was terrible. It was reported that over 500 people lost their lives within these few days, and most of them were civilians. Many families were broken. Homes, business, and public buildings were left in ruin. The Gambia was bleeding, not just from the wounds, but from the pain and the fear that had torn through its people. Peace has finally returned, but the Gambia would never forget these 7 dark days. When the gunfire finally stopped and calm returned to the streets, the Gambia was a country in pain. Over 500 people has already died. Most were innocent civilians, mothers, fathers, children, caught in a war they did not ask for. Thousands more were wounded, grieving, or mentally scarred by what they have seen. Houses were destroyed, lives were shattered. Nothing felt safe anymore. The coup was more than just an attack on the government. It was a shock to the entire nation, a wake-up call that showed how fragile Gambia's peace and democracy truly was. In response, leaders from the Gambia and Senegal came together to form a new partnership. In 1982, they created the Senegambia Confederation, a political and military union between the two countries. The idea was simple. If they stood together, it would be harder for such chaos to ever return. Inside the country, there were also big challenges. The field forces, the paramilitary group, blamed for helping fuel the chaos, was dissolved. Instead, the Gambia started to build something it has never had, a proper national army, loyal to the state, trained to protect the people. But unfortunately, 13 years later, this new national army will lead the next coup, ending the 32-year rule of President Jawara. On the streets, there was a big challenge. Trust has already been broken. Trust between the people and their leaders, between neighbors, even within families. Healing would take years, maybe even generations. And what about Kukoi, the man who had led the bloody uprising fled the country, becoming a wanted fugitive? He later found protection in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi's regime, where he lived in exile for years. Kukoi never returned to the Gambia until the change of president. It was rumored that the new President Jammeh would have his men monitor his every move while he was in the Gambia. He was on strict surveillance. His return to the Gambia lasted only for a few weeks. He later died in Mali in 2013, far from the country he once tried to control. For many Gambians, his death closed a dark chapter, but the memories of that week, the fear, the hunger, the gunshots, the losses, those will never be forgotten.
Click here to watch other documentaries like this. Subscribe for more.